It's the Unhappy Hour.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Unhappy Hour, and yes, I'm going to intro this show a little differently. Because I wanted you to hear the song just a little bit. It's one of our main opening theme songs. We have several. This song is called Franciscan. It was written by my brother Chris Engelman for Elevated Tracks. Yeah, but it's a bit of a retrospective right now for today's program here on the Unhappy Hour, the TNAM radio network. It's a retrospective because today is our 5th anniversary, 5-year anniversary. Can you believe that? 5 years. Talk about playoffs. Playoffs? I was hoping to win a game. Oh, one of our favorite sound bites of all time. Playoffs? Talk about playoffs? I was hoping to win a game. Anyway, 5 years, half a decade we've been doing this. So thank you to Chris for all the songs he's written and all the stuff that he's contributed over the years. I guess let's just leave this as a blanket statement. If you've worked with us or been on our show, assisted us in any way. Let's see, a couple of names. Ted Distel of disteldesign.com for creating our website and helping us get this thing built 5 years ago. The car's still running, Teddy. You did something right. Thank you. Sean Flynn, who is no longer with us, passed away in a motorcycle crash several years ago. One of my best friends on the planet, in the world, but he's the one. Hang on, actually, here, let me just play him. This is Sean right here. So I played you some of that. You know this. Here you go.
It's the Unhappy Hour.
That was Sean. Sean designed and created that and spoke on that. Put that together. Here's his other one.
The Unhappy Hour on the new AmericanMedia.com.
So thank you to Sean. Thank you to Amanda. My girlfriend has helped me create a lot of the graphics and so many other things behind the scenes. Just in the day-to-day, trying to figure out how to keep all the technology from imploding. Thank you so much for all of your help there. Really, I mean, I can't even begin to list all the people who've taken their time to be on the program, all of our guests. There's really no way to break down and start listing off people over the past 5 years. I mean, what are we talking? We do 600, 700, 800 shows. Videos that we've posted up on YouTube. I don't even know where to begin. I just want to thank everybody. Everybody. You know who you are. I really should come up with a master list, but yeah, I got other things to do, such as talking about the Cleveland Browns draft. So we're going to bring in Rob Trautman from SOT Podcast, that's Sports on Tap. The Sports on Tap podcast, covering all of the wheelings and dealings of the Cleveland Browns as they're trying to get out of the gutter, out of the mediocrity. Speaking of mediocrity, the Indians are sitting there at, what was it, 10-10 last time I checked? Hey, you know what? We're not playing horribly. That's a good thing. I'll take that. But it would sure be nice if we were just a game or two back from first place right now. You don't really want to let this division run away with you with the White Sox and the Royals right now. Come on, guys. Get it together. And Cleveland Cavaliers open up their series against, the Hawks. We know who we're playing tomorrow. So go Cavs. Anyhow, back into the show. We're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns draft. But before we do, I just want to remind you to check out our homepage, thenewamericanmedia.com. All of our political shows, for Agree to Disagree, The Unhappy Hour, it's all up there. On the right-hand side of our homepage, that Ted Distel of disteldesign.com put together, the TNAM radio button is where you click play to listen live. Underneath that, it's our Twitter feed and our Facebook feed, so link up with us right there. On Twitter, we're at American_media_. Instagram, I think we're putting some great stuff out there. Just check it out. Every platform gives us a different way to get out different information. They all offer something, and they all kind of offer something really different. That's the key. You're going to get different programming, different information through our different channels. So link up with all of them. The Instagram we just started, just search The New American, or Instagram.com/The New American Media, YouTube.com/The New American Media. That's the only way we have for you to support the program so far. I don't know why we haven't set this up with a donation or a Bitcoin or, GoFundMe or, Indiegogo, some of these crowdsourcing things, but that's on its way. The only way you can do it right now is youtube.com/The New American Media. Click subscribe, let the commercials play, and that helps us out. 5 years in, I'm looking forward at the next 5 years and where I want to go and the team I want to have under the TNAM umbrella. So it's going to take funding. We're going to have to figure this out. So consider it PBS at this point. I got to set something else up because I know some of you like what we're doing and we want to connect with you. But anyway, just really, from the bottom of my heart, every guest who's ever been on our show, everybody who's helped me behind the scenes, thank you so much. It's been an amazing 5 years. But we have a 10-year plan. We have a 10-year plan over here to do something really special. So if you can think of people that would like what we're doing, reach out to them and ask them to combine and connect with us. It's time to take a few steps forward. So anyway, speaking of a few steps forward, let's get into our program with Rob Trautman. He does Sports on Tap, the SOT podcast. And we got a draft to highlight. I love this part of the show, by the way. It's my favorite.
How you doing, Brian?
Living the dream. How are you, Rob?
Fantastic.
Hey, by the way, would you rather? It's Game 7. I know this isn't what we talked about in pre-production, but it's Game 7 with Charlotte and Miami. Are you rooting for anybody there? Do you care? Miami's up by 12 at halftime.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'd like to see Charlotte win that game.
Yeah, I kind of go back and forth between, we really do have an axe to grind with Miami and that whole organization. On the other hand, we totally don't. Whatever, we're all free agents. But, I'm just wondering if in this dream season when LeBron gets the first title Cleveland's seen in 52 years, if it would have to be fitting that you would have to go through both Miami and Steph Curry and the Warriors. It just seems like to conquer this curse, that you would have to do these Herculean things, and it's almost just karma and fate. You'd have to go through them. So I'm kind of torn.
Yeah, it wouldn't be bad. I mean, it would be fun to go against Miami, and I mean they have some pretty talented guys on that team, there's no doubt. But yeah, it would be fun to really go through them and give them a butt whooping, and then face Steph Curry in a rematch. That would be pretty fun. And the way the Cavs are playing right now, I mean, it's definitely fun to watch. And I think that Pistons series is exactly what the Cavs needed. I mean, yeah, they won 4 games to none, but Detroit's not a bad basketball team. They're very young, and I feel like there wasn't a lot of love towards the Cavaliers in that game, and they had to fight for everything. And I thought it brought this team closer a little bit.
No, that's a great point. I'm so glad you brought that up. And by the way, we will talk about the Cleveland Browns, but damn it, it's my program and I get to set this up. And I'm not selling commercials about auto insurance just yet, so I don't have hard breaks that I need to hit. So I'll do it my way, damn it. Anyway, but
that's right.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's so true. The Cavs locking in the number 1 seed. You would have figured we might have been able to take care of business, and with the exception of one game, these were 1 or 2 possession games. Key moments, that cross-court rifle, that bullet from Dellavedova to Kyrie with .7 to nail a 3. I mean, that's just completely demoralizing for a team. It took some Herculean plays to even get past the Pistons. I think you're very right about that. I want you to expand on that for just a second. I mean, do you think LeBron and the Heat had to go through similar things to kind of coalesce and become a tighter team from year 1 to year 2 winning the championship down there? And do you see those similarities with the Pistons series with the Cavs?
With the Heat, I feel like the team got along almost immediately. I mean, when you look at LeBron, Bosh, and Wade, they're all really good friends. And not to say that Kyrie and Kevin Love and LeBron aren't really good friends, but I think they're a little bit different. Where you saw some bumps in the road in the season. They're winning a lot of games, the Cavs, but then you look at LeBron and Kevin Love. It seemed like Kevin Love was kind of the odd man out, and then there were rumors that Kyrie Irving and LeBron weren't getting along that well, and so I think the Cavs had some different bumps in the road to go through. Miami, they have the big three, and it was a little bit of a different time there because other teams weren't able to go out and really get as many superstars on a team like they did. So I think they hit it right at the right time, Miami did, to win those championships. But they still, the 2 years they didn't win, they went through some tough times. But yeah, I think it's a little different time. But at the same time, the Cavs, like you said, with the Pistons, they're a very young team. But man, they were tough, and I think they would have definitely won 1 or 2 games playing a different team. You look at the other series with Indiana and Toronto, that's a great series to watch. And then Charlotte and Miami, Atlanta and Boston. I think you look at Detroit, I think they would have at least gotten 1 game versus, Atlanta or Boston, I feel like. And I think they could have I think they match up really well with Boston. They're 2 similar teams, very young, like to get out and run, but are pretty talented. So either way, I think those 2 would have matched up well. But it's kind of interesting the way this NBA playoffs has kind of gone through so far. But like you said, the Cavs had so many close games in that Detroit series that I think they just overcame a lot of adversity with the Pistons. And for sure with, getting down by 10 points and then third quarters were actually the strong point for the Cavs, which they struggled all year. They did really well in the third and fourth quarters. So it was fun to watch, and we'll see what Atlanta can bring to the table in the next round.
Looking at the individual games in that series, there really wasn't more than 1 or 2 mistakes that they could have made in order to get the win. So, you can't look at those teams and say that somebody was playing good and somebody else was slacking or somebody else wasn't pulling their weight. You look at LeBron, you look at Kyrie, you look at K-Love, you look at everybody else on that team aside from the big 3. Every single player on that team needs to get 1 more rebound, needs to box out 1 more person, needs to make 1 more smart foul and avoid 1 more dumb foul. Against the Pistons, that's an 8 seed. And, I heard LeBron, I just caught wind yesterday. It was just some 30-second clip. I don't even know where I saw it. It was on Facebook. It scrolled past me, and it just talked about him. He was talking about the playoffs, how every possession is delicate. Every single possession is delicate, like a rose. It's beautiful, this and that, but if you mishandle it, you can destroy it. It's very delicate, every possession in the playoffs. And I think, that's exactly what we're looking at is when you're in a close game that's decided by just a point or a couple of points, it's delicate. We need to be doing better so that we don't make it that close because then you run a risk of letting the other team get one, So it's a lot of young players on the Cavs and, LeBron, who has a lot of playoff experience, and he's got to be that teacher. He's got to be that leader. Tyronn Lue hasn't been there before, not quite the same way by any stretch of the imagination. He's no Greg Popovich, I'll tell you that much. So, everybody is leaning on LeBron to teach them how to be winners, how to be champions, how to become a championship team, and how to do it together. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. You're right. The regular season, they had a lot of ups and downs. Some of the downs made no sense, but you know what? It's the regular season. It doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter. Look at Steph Curry. He gets injured. Some of these players have been playing big-time minutes trying to get that regular season record. So what? We're not playing for the regular season record. At least we're not. So it's interesting to kind of think about how the lay of the land is going to continue progressing as the playoffs start narrowing down to our championships games in each conference. So anyway, I'm very much looking forward to what we have to see in the rest of the Cavs season, rest of the NBA playoff season. You have any final words, Mr. Trautman, on the Cavs before we bounce over to the Browns?
No, it's going to be a fun ride, and it starts on Monday night, or continues rather on Monday night at 7. And like I said, it's gonna, they might lose the game, but let's just tell all the Cavs fans out there, it's not the end of the world. You're not going to get continually, sweep in the playoffs, which it would be nice, but it's going to be competitive and it's going to be tough, but I think this team is really starting to come together as a team and play really well at the right time. So let's enjoy it, and it will continue on Monday.
All right. Rob, real quick, before we get into the Cleveland Browns, real quick, tell everybody what you do with your program, where people can check it out, and all that jazz.
Yeah, we're a local sports podcast called Sports on Tap, and we talk a lot of local sports, high school sports in the Northeast Ohio area. We also do cover the Cleveland Browns, Cleveland Cavaliers, Indians, and whatever else you want to talk about at SOT Podcast. We're also on Facebook, and most of our podcasts are now on neosportsinsiders.com, and they cover all Cleveland sports. If you like WWE wrestling, MMA fighting, soccer, MLS soccer's on there, local high school sports. If you're from the Cleveland area and you want to know what's going on in local sports, go on there for that. Monsters hockey, everything Cleveland sports and regular, a lot of interesting articles there. So neosportsinsiders.com, and it's at neosportsinside is where you can follow them on Twitter.
All right. Yeah, I think we did actually find that NEO Sports Inside. Insiders? No, it's Inside. So yeah, I did tag that in the show notes. All right, so let's get inside the NFL draft in 2016 with the Cleveland Browns. First off, let's just do this. Say you're in charge of the Cleveland Browns. You're sitting there with the number 2 pick. Whether you're aggressively hustling to sell that pick, or you get a phone call one day with a very interesting offer, and I don't think it matters. Let's just say if you're running that, you need to have people out there putting feelers out and people receiving the phone calls as well. But if you're at number 2, would you make the trade that the Browns did to drop back and collect some more assets to further build this team down the road? Did you like that move?
You know what? If my whole thing was if they didn't feel too good about the 2 quarterbacks, if they thought there was another quarterback that was probably not far off of them, or if they didn't see them as franchise guys, then, trade the pick and move up. I feel like they still could be franchise guys, but I think in the Browns' minds, they probably thought, look how many needs we have with this team. If we get a franchise quarterback, that's great, but, then we won't get the picks this year or next year. And, they racked up a lot of picks for next year. Now all of a sudden you have 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and I'm not even sure how many they have in the third, but, they can make a deal and possibly get, their quarterback and see where they're at next year. Because I think they do believe RG3 can be a really good quarterback. But with all they got from Philadelphia for Carson Wentz, it's like 5 picks. It was pretty impressive. Not only did they get their number 1 this year, and I think they got a number 3. I can't remember everything, but I know next year they get a number 2 from them and their number 1, and then I believe they got their 4th this year or something like that. So they got a lot of picks valued at that number 2, and obviously, maybe this whole time they knew they were going wide receiver in the draft and that they could get them maybe as a mid-selection. So they just figured why not make a few trades, get some of the picks since we need so much and we're really far away. And I didn't mind it. I thought it was a pretty good trade. Now let's see what Carson Wentz does. But, even if he is a good quarterback, the Browns still have 5 or 6 picks from the Eagles that, they can rest assured. Hopefully there'll be a few good picks in there because they need to start hitting on some of these picks. And, they had 11 or a decent amount of draft picks here. So let's see what they did in this draft.
Yeah, let's count this off. Corey Coleman, Emmanuel Ogbah, and I got to learn if there's some weird names here. Corey Coleman, Emmanuel Ogbah, Carl Nassib, Sean Coleman, Cody Kessler, Joe Schobert, Ricardo Lewis, Derek Kindred, Dave DeValve, Jordan Payton, Spencer Drango, Rashad Higgins, Trey Caldwell, Scooby Wright, That's 14 picks in a 7-round draft. 14 picks. 1 in the first, 1 in the second, 1, 2, 3 in the third, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the fourth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 in the fifth. They skipped the sixth and took Scooby Wright, which might be the steal of the draft, right at the end of the 29th pick in the 7th round. 14 picks in 7 rounds. They did something really nice there. I'm liking it, and it all starts at the top with Corey Coleman. Let's talk about him. People are saying, "Oh, we took another midget receiver," and you go, "Well, isn't he the same size as Odell Beckham? And don't they jump about the same?" Okay, let's talk about that. But you know what? The Browns traded back. They accumulated assets. And when they picked at receiver, the guy that worked with A.J. Green for so many years, he got to put his input in and say, I think this person is the best wide receiver out of the entire draft class. At this position, at this pick, I want this person. They took Corey Coleman. He's a touchdown machine. Break down that pick for me.
Well, I think the people that are disappointed with the Corey Coleman pick, and who knows how he'll do, but I think the people that are disappointed with Corey Coleman and give the Browns a bad grade on his draft, probably wanted Treadwell or Doxson from LSU, but Treadwell I really like, but after seeing Corey Coleman, I mean, this kid has gone through a lot already. But when you're compared to Percy Harvin and Sammy Watkins, like you said, an Odell Beckham kind of player, he's a dynamic playmaker. Mike Mayock said on the NFL Network, I think this kid has the chance to be a really good wide receiver. And remember, the Browns lost Travis Benjamin, who had a lot of speed. Wasn't an amazing player, but he was a really good player. Spread the field a lot. And, when you look at a guy like Corey Coleman, he's quick, has pretty good hands. Yeah, he had some games where he might have had a few drops, but you're going to have that every once in a while. He was the Biletnikoff winner, which is the nation's best wide receiver in 2015. And if you look at some of his games, I mean, he had 15 catches for 224 yards and a touchdown against a really good Oklahoma team versus Michigan, which Michigan, we'll say the team up north, they didn't have a great year. He had 150 and a touchdown in the Cotton Bowl, which a lot of teams had really good games against Michigan. We all know that. But this kid really came up big at big times and consistently put up those kind of numbers all year round. And I mean, he's just one of those guys that even when he got injured, he's playing, through some injuries, and but none of them are severe. But this kid goes up, gets the ball, and at first I said, this is comparable to Andrew Hawkins. He's a short, 5'11", he's 190 whatever pounds. He's quick. I said, this guy reminds me of Andrew Hawkins. And then I saw the tape, and I said, well, he's a lot different than Andrew Hawkins.
Yeah, right.
He's a vertical threat that goes down the field, goes up and gets the balls. He's quick. Yeah, they say his route running ability could be improved. But when you look at his offense, I mean, he was running what the Baylor offense was told to run, which are, he's going to have those pop screens coming out, and then he's going to create. And otherwise, he goes deep. So he didn't have a lot of opportunity to run different routes. So we'll see how that happens. But I was really impressed when I saw this kid's tape of all the skill sets he has, good hands. And this is exactly what the Browns needed, was a lot of speed to make up for that Travis Benjamin loss. So I was actually pretty impressed. I haven't heard a ton about him before the draft, but once you do a little research on him, I think he's pretty impressive.
Now, let me just say, let's just imagine a team for a second. Let's just look at the receiving core. And I just want to put this out there just to postulate. Just let's imagine a team. The people catching the ball, you have Josh Gordon at the 1. You have the new kid, Corey Coleman. You have Travis Benjamin. You have Gary Barnidge. And you have a Brian Hartline or something. That's actually not... That's pretty, that would have been very interesting. Let's just face it, though. Travis Benjamin's gone. Just face it. He ain't coming back. Let's basically say the same damn thing about Josh Gordon at this point. Hey, if he shows up, what a welcome surprise, Josh. Good to see you, but here's your space on the bench till you can prove that you're not going to do this again, okay? It's like the puppy. Hey, puppy, you have to sleep in the training cage until you learn that you don't go pee-pee inside, okay? You're in the doghouse here with the Cleveland Browns, all right? There's where you go. So the Browns have really turned this into a battle royal at wide receiver. Before we go down to Ogba and Nassib and everybody else on this team, just talk about the wide receiver position in general on this team. What we're looking at, what you think they're trying to put together to create a competent, if not dynamic, wide receiving core in Cleveland.
Well, I think that if you look at, a lot of people are saying, wow, they drafted 5 wide receivers, and I was almost shocked that they drafted that many. But if you look at the skill set of each wide receiver, and we can go through them eventually here, but the wide receivers all possess a little bit something different. There's a wide receiver that's more of a possession wide receiver when you look at, what he's done in college, but the way he'll transition to the NFL, they had him as a possession wide receiver. And then you go down the line, there's Ricardo Lewis, who was impressive at Auburn. He's more of a guy kind of like a Corey Coleman. He's a little bit different, obviously. He doesn't have the speed he does, but he's a big play wide receiver and really stepped up at Auburn when one of their starting wide receivers got hurt. He stepped in and really put up some nice numbers. But the Georgia game versus Auburn, everybody remembers that game. Auburn's down with 8 seconds left. They throw it up in the air. 2 Georgia Bulldogs go up, tip it, and it's Lewis that's on the receiving end of that tip ball, goes in for a touchdown, and Auburn wins. He's that kind of player that just can make all kinds of plays down the field. Then you go down and you see UCLA wide receiver Jordan Payton, which is in your neck of the woods in California.
Yeah.
And they have him listed as a possession receiver, but he was the Bruins' career receptions record holder. He's more of a safe underneath target. And they say he's limited with his big play ability, but is that just because UCLA really didn't throw down the field to him a ton, or maybe they see him as more of an underneath possession kind of wide receiver? And then Rashard Higgins, he's out of Colorado State.
Wait! Before we get to Higgins,
what's that?
Before we get to him, even just to stop here on Jordan Payton about being a possession receiver. You need someone like a Juravicius when he's healthy, or a Brian
Absolutely.
Brennan, or just that safety valve. That is such a key position when so many people are doing these, especially the types of offenses that are being run in 2016. You need that check 1, check 2. Oh crap! There's my guy. And that guy is going to wait to time it to make a big move late in the route to make sure he's right where you need him to be, so you don't get sacked, you don't take the loss, you don't throw an interception, you get it to your person. That is such an important position to have, and why couldn't you take a guy like that in the 4th round? Why wouldn't you find someone that, we're looking for home run hitters. So what? We're going to hit singles all day, and we're going to destroy you. We're going to wear out your pitching staff at the end of the series. Thank you very much. There's different ways to approach it, and who knows if Jordan Payton's that kind of guy, but the Browns just said, hey, it's battle royal time. Let's bring everybody here, and let's not even forget Terrell Pryor. Terrell Pryor's going to do something this year. Mark my words, he's going to be doing something this year. He's an asset to this team that's lacking in assets. He's going to do something this year. Any of your thoughts on Terrell Pryor? Pryor.
Well, when you look at Pryor, he's one of those big physical wide receivers. Last year he had one catch that I remember specifically where he just went up over a defender and got the ball, and I'm like, maybe now he'll start playing a little more, because he's exactly what the Browns needed, was that big physical wide receiver you can put on either side and just throw it up and let him go get it. And we didn't see that very often.
You can do those 10 and 15-yard routes, by the way. They don't always need to be 40-yard bombs. You can do these routes, and it's like you're looking at a guy that's 5'10", 5'9", 5'11", 6 foot max. Some of these defensive backs, just throw it up. Just throw it to the sidelines. Let him try to make a play on it. I think he's going to be playing this year. I've heard a couple interviews where Hugh and the rest of the team and Sashi, they've talked about Terrell Pryor. And I think 2 years into this, we're going to see something out of him. You throw it up and let him go get it. You don't need to make a perfect throw. You just play jump ball a little bit. And you do it in smart ways so that you limit your interceptions. Comeback routes are perfect for that. They respect your deep threat, and then you just plant, pivot, and come back 5 yards and just put it right there where it won't ever be an interception, but you're the only one that can make that play. But we saw something similar out of another Ohio State quarterback, Braxton Miller. He got drafted as a wide receiver. Where do you see the similarities between former Buckeye quarterbacks Pryor and Miller and their similarities in receiving types of receivers that you might see him developing into?
Well, I can see Braxton Miller. He's a guy that could probably spread the field. I mean, you saw what he did at Ohio State. I mean, he was only 1 year at wide receiver, and he had some games where you knew he needed to be involved, and then there's other games he only had maybe 1 or 2 catches. But he's a guy that's going to really, I think, make that Texans team, and he could be, one of those wide receivers that easily, can be a 10 to 15 yard catch guy. He can obviously spread the field, but like you said, you don't need to do that every single play. Terrell Pryor obviously is a little bit receiver, but they both had to go through the same exact things. I mean, you start off as a quarterback for, look at Pryor. He went he actually played some quarterback even in the NFL with Oakland and did decent. I mean, I thought he actually played pretty well at quarterback in Oakland, and then all of a sudden, they're trying to change him to a wide receiver, and he went to another team. But I think he's definitely worth a shot. They have obviously a learning curve in the NFL trying to be a receiver, but their talent you just can't teach, especially with Braxton and Terrell Pryor. I mean, both of them have so much talent out there and physical ability that I think they're going to figure out a way to be good. But both, good hands. Maybe the route running needs to be improved, but Braxton's pretty fast. Even Terrell Pryor, he's lengthy. Not the fastest guy, but he's also pretty fast. So I think they'll transition into a wide receiver very well, and they could be big play receivers with maybe not right away, but I think, as they learn, they'll get better and better.
I think I jumped in and interrupted you on Rashard Higgins if you want to get back to wrapping up our draft class as well.
Yeah, Rashard Higgins, he actually, a lot of scouts said he's the most pro-ready wide receiver the Browns selected. He's a very good hands. He separates well from defenders. And he can be that short. I don't think he's going to be, another deep ball kind of guy. I think he's also an intermediate to a short pass kind of guy, but he was a workhorse when you look at him at Colorado State. He's 6'1", 196 pounds, and another guy that in Hugh Jackson's offense I think is going to have another position. So the way Hugh Jackson drafted a lot of these wide receivers, I think he has different ideas of what they'll be doing. So it's not, let's just draft 5 wide receivers and hopefully a few make it. I really think he thinks that there'll probably be 3 to 4 of these guys that maybe make it, and who knows, you might see the veteran Brian Hartline not make the team, or a few of the other wide receivers. Who knows what Andrew Hawkins, if they believe these young guys have a lot of talent and are going to be impressive and fit Hugh Jackson's offense, I think you're going to see a lot more of these younger guys than probably some of the veterans that were signed last year. So we'll wait and see. Those are some of the wide receivers the Browns selected that there were 5 of them, but overall, they all have, I think, a different game plan here in the Hugh Jackson offense.
Let's talk about the second-round pick, went defensive end out of Oklahoma State. Talk about what we're getting there. What is this a plug-and-play kind of player? How is this going to pan out for the Browns in 2016, do you think?
Looking at him, I mean, he's 6'4", 273 pounds.
That's
a defensive end.
Yeah, that's a big boy.
And a lot of the guys said when he's playing angry, look out, this guy is just an absolute huge talent. And, I'm not going to lie, before the draft, I didn't know much about this guy. But he is just absolutely a physical specimen out there. I mean, he has led the team. He was winning the Big 12 Defensive Lineman of the Year. He had 17 tackles for loss, including 11 sacks. And then as a junior, he had 17 and a half tackles for loss. Defensive Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. You look at him over and over. He just keeps putting up the numbers. Every year he got better. And I think he understood his role at Oklahoma State more and more. But I think, you look at this guy's frame. I mean, he already is just built to play. I think he can take a beating and just, keep going. He hits hard. He has good speed around the edges when you want him to rush a quarterback. And I think that's what the Browns really want. They want to put pressure on the quarterbacks more this year. Because I think last year, obviously the Browns defense to me was absolutely terrible. In my opinion, Jim O'Neill really struggled at finding any kind of a defensive scheme that worked and to put the players in the right situations to make big plays. I felt like he had no clue what he was doing. But, with this team now, Ray Horton, we know what he offers to the table, and you got to know that he had to be a part of this draft and tell the guys what kind of draft picks he wanted. But
that's so important, though. I think that's a really important point. What kind of player? When I played at Brunswick, we definitely went up. We played Canton McKinley my senior year in the second round of the playoffs. We were undefeated that regular season, undefeated the season before, and went to the state championship against Ignatius when I was a junior. And then in the second round, I went up a guy that was 6'7", 285. That was my guy, 6'7", 285. And I'd say we battled to a standstill. What I do get a fumble recovery or something, and then he held me on a play that got hooked around me on the side for an unfortunate touchdown. I mean, you can watch it. I was spun around. It was a total garbage play, but whatever, man. I let him do it to me. I can't wait for the refs to save me and bail me out. But you'll see, it was horrible. Anyway, with my teams that I played with on Brunswick for the Blue Devils, we might not have been 6'7", 285. But we had heart, we had give a damn, we had hustle, we had anger, we had focus, we had great coaching, we had great strategies, we had great game plans. Our coaches were so good at breaking down the film of the opponent and really getting that scout team to learn those plays and practice them, and so much during that week of preparation that when it came time for game time, there was no thinking. It was all reacting. You just knew where you were supposed to be. If your tackle takes 2 steps to the right as the right defensive end, lower your shoulder because there's a pulling guard coming right at you. He's trying to blow you out of there on a running play. So you just knew exactly what was expected of you, and that's maybe what we'll get out of Ogba if he gets better and better, and he's the right type of player for Ray Horton. He plays amazing when he plays angry. If you're focused, I think the Browns taking Justin Gilbert and Johnny Manziel. I mean, take a look at what difference it makes when you don't really give a damn if you make it or not. Yeah, it'd be cool if I'm a quarterback in the NFL, but whatever. I'm going to blow some coke today. How important football is to the player, I think that should have been the number one question. How important is football in your life? And you want the guys to go, I eat, sleep, and breathe football, sir. And if you put me on this team, I'm going to do everything to destroy the thing across the field from me. You go, all right, I like that guy. Let's draft him if he's available at 33, or whatever. I could totally see that.
Yeah, I think that's what the Browns did a little bit. If you look in this draft, a lot of interesting stories on each one of these players, but
well, what kind of stories?
To prove.
Break down some of those stories, please.
Well, you look at a player like Carl Nassib. He was from the Big Ten country of Penn State. You look at his in 2015 football season. He went from preferred walk-on status to 2 years of special teams to basically leading the nation in sacks with 15.5 and forced fumbles with 6 in his senior year.
Wow.
He's had All-American honors, 19.5 tackles for loss, and he won the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, Lombardi Award as nation's top offense or defensive lineman. And he was just a walk-on to start, but he earned his way at Penn State onto that team. And really, a lot of people didn't know too much about him. But he still has some things to work on, obviously. But they compare Nassib to Jared Allen and says he doesn't know everything he's doing yet, but he plays hard and has a relentless motor that you will not believe. And Mike Mayock says he's a good edge rusher with upside. And that's from Mike Mayock on Carl Nassib, the defensive end from Penn State. And if you watch the Ohio State game this year, I mean, Penn State every year, it seemed like with him there, gave Ohio State's offense all kinds of issues. He was in the backfield making tackles, and just one of those players that continually plays hard. And, I mean, when you're getting compared to Jared Allen, I mean, that's pretty impressive, and we know what kind of player he is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Jared Allen was one of my favorite players to watch, and he wore the same number that I wore in high school, too. Like, it was just... I love great defensive ends that can get it done. You know, the Browns just, for whatever talent they've seen glimpses or a couple good plays here and there throughout a season, it's been so hard to get dominant defensive end play. You know, let's not even say dominant, but let's just say way above average. You know, just to get one person on either side that's a disruptive force, that's just someone really good to constantly make sure you're paying attention to. Like when we would practice, the players with enormous potential to destroy you in the game, they'd get like that red shirt or something. They get that yellow jersey. And so every play, you always had to know, where's that running back? That running back is going, you know, probably to the pros. He's that good. He's going to Michigan next year. Watch this guy, blah, blah, or that team up north. You know, but for me, as I look across the league, you know, growing up, Reggie White or Bruce Smith, and, you know, go through all these fantastic defensive ends. It's been a long time since. When would you say the Browns last had a dominant defensive lineman? Let me ask you that.
Well, you know, it hasn't been. If we have had a solid defensive lineman, you know, it hasn't been in a long time because it hasn't been consistent play. You know, you can have a good game here or there, but overall, you know, it's not dominating from start, you know, from game 1 to game 16. So I can't even remember
let's leave
the
that.
last time.
Okay, let's leave that as a hanging question out there for the people listening to the show after the fact. Like when we post it on YouTube, when we get to this point, when do you think the Browns' last dominant defensive lineman? When was the last time the Browns had a dominant defensive lineman? What year? Who are you referencing? And other than them, what would you say the next best one was? Let's leave that question for some of the hardcore listeners that might actually press pause and think about that.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what they all say because, you know, it's probably, you know, when you look at the Browns come back in 99 or 2000, and, you know, it just seems like the Browns have had some okay defenses, but, you know, you draft like Courtney Brown, who, you know, is quiet, but you thought would be an absolute beast of a defensive end, and he ended up doing not much. Gerard Warren was there that you think, oh, this is another guy that could be a beast. He didn't seem to do very much. You know, they drafted one after another, and it just hasn't panned out to be very good. Now, Phil Taylor, you know, when he was injury prone, but he was sometimes decent, you know, getting into the backfield and making plays, but it's just not consistent play. Not a guy that you're like, there he is making another tackle, or there he is in the backfield again. You know, it's just, you know, disappointing time in and time again. You know, you draft a Mingo with I don't even know what pick, maybe the 6th pick overall, and, you know, he came in pretty skinny. This year, it could be a different story. He put on about 20 pounds, and they're hoping he can be relentless and one of those solid defensive players. But it's just a lot on the defense. You get a lot of okay and good players, but you don't get a lot of great players. And that's what, actually, with the Browns in the first round, I was hoping they would end up getting Joey Bosa. I thought that guy is going to be a beast, and he went to a San Diego team that I thought San Diego would go with an offensive lineman. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully some of these picks can really be the next beast on the Browns defensive line or on the Browns defense, period.
Well, okay, let's kind of ramp this up a little bit. I want to do more scattershot, do a bunch of questions here as we kind of start winding this down. At the first pick in the second round, taking Ogba where we did, we passed on a lot of talented players. Are you okay with that based on what you've learned about him?
You know what? Right now I am. And, you know, they were trying to say that they just didn't get an offer they liked, but they really liked Agba from Oklahoma State. They really liked what he had to offer him. He's 6'4", 275. If they feel like he's going to be a game changer on the defense, that fit their defensive system, and Ray Horton's excited about him and all that, then, I mean, you really can't be disappointed. You know, Jalen Smith went behind there, and he's a really impressive player, and probably would have been, you know, number one or top 10 easily. But the question is, you have no clue when he's going to play. For the Browns, that just doesn't make sense. You need players now. You know, Kevin Dodd was drafted right after the Tennessee. I thought he was a pretty impressive player. But the more you look at Agba, I think he's going to be a pretty interesting player to follow this year. Miles Jack, too, right behind. I thought the Browns could have picked him up, and maybe they were considering him, but he's another player that's a little bit injury prone, and you have no clue how he's going to come back. So that's a little bit of a risk. So why not go for a guy you've seen has been successful in college and has done it all? So I can't be really mad about that.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to kind of bank on stability, just to get some stability in the coaching staff, the front office, a quarterback on the line, either side. Any sort of stability will do. We're not in the position where we can get somebody and maybe redshirt them. We'll see what they can do next year. We'll put them in. We'll see. No. We got way too many holes that need to be filled with the right kind of person. Talk about the offensive line. We did lose Mitchell Schwartz. We did lose Alex Mack. And man, They keep talking about trading Joe Thomas relentlessly. So talk about the offensive line with our middle pick in the third. We took Sean Coleman out of Auburn. What kind of guy is he?
Well, Sean Coleman, he's another guy that, was pretty impressed through all kinds of issues with his health. And I don't have exactly what it was called that he went through, but it was unbelievable, his up and down status, and I'll get it up here in a minute, exactly what he went through. But it's really unbelievable to see a player like that. He went through acute lymphoblastic leukemia, and now you want to talk about a great story. Over the next few years after that, he was a top 10 offensive tackle, and he worked at St. Jude's Children's Hospital to treat and defeat his disease with that. And finally, he was cleared to play in spring of 2012. I thought with Greg Robinson, we remember him in the 2014 NFL draft. He was the number 2 overall selection. That's basically Sean Thompson followed him, learned from him, and has been able to hold down the blind spot for every single game, and was receiving second all-team SEC honors from the leagues and coaches. And this is a guy that could be just flat-out nasty on the offensive line. He's one of those offensive tackles that I think could be really, really good on the offensive line. And a lot of people like his selection. I mean, look at 6'5", 307 pounds. He's gone through a lot, so obviously he knows a lot about work ethic. And another really good story that the Browns, I think, were probably impressed with talking to him, and just overall his work ethic, going through what he had to go through to get back on the field. I think he's going to be a good story to follow too. And that's most of these Browns. If you look at who they've drafted, they're players that, like you said, love the game, have gone through some ups and downs in their college career. Maybe it's high school, but they continually figure out ways to be the best. And a lot of them are big conferences. I mean, he is not somebody that's just from anywhere. He went to Auburn and has played really well in the SEC. So Sean Coleman is a guy that I think is going to be pretty impressive, and that might be a steal in the third round, the 76th pick overall.
Let's talk about after him, Cody Kessler. This is where everything gets very intriguing, because I saw the reports out here, USC in my backyard, and UCLA for that matter, but you started hearing reports about a week ago that the Browns were very interested in this kid that might go undrafted out of USC. The quarterback, he's been playing for a little while for the Trojans. He might go 7th round, maybe undrafted. Well, here's a situation where you ask, did the Browns, did they overpay? The question is, it's not so much about overvaluing. I think it's okay to take a pick a little too early if you project him to be at that point. And if you say, hey, I think we have a third-round draft pick right here. I don't care who's telling me he's going in the 7th. He's worth a 3, and I'm going to use a 3, and I'm going to get him. I'm not going to wait till 4 or 5 and say, that's the player I really wanted. Well, but Mike Mayock said this, and he said the 6th round. So, I felt it would just been a little bit of a misappropriation of funds if I just, he's a 6th-round pick according to this other guy. Well, if the Browns and Hugh Jackson see him as a 3rd-round pick, and we have 3 of them, I say, hey, let's put the benefit of the doubt into the hands of the coaches and Sashi Brown and Paul DePodesta. Just say, hey, if you value him there, take him there. Maybe even overpay on some of these players just a little bit because you think that they're going to be or have that much potential. So let's get your thoughts on taking Cody Kessler, quarterback from USC.
Well, I was surprised at first because you look at Connor Cook was still there, and I thought he was the player that needed some work, but could be a pretty decent quarterback in the league. But then you start reading about his attitude and some of the things he said in articles, and it almost blows my mind at some of the things he said about, whatever coaches or scouts said his attitude stunk or whatever. And, he said that the scouts and coaches must have lost their mind, and he thought it was hilarious that they don't know what they're talking about. And it's like, if you're going to say that, you're going to have all kinds of issues. But Cody Kessler, one thing you got to remember is, Steve Sarkisian, the head coach of USC, look at all the issues that he had to go through there. I mean, it's almost unfortunate. They went through all kinds of issues with him. Then he was fired. But looking at his statistics, this is a guy that doesn't turn the ball over much. I mean, in 2014, he had 39 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. In 2015, it was 29 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, and he owns the school record for career completion percentage at 67.5%. So obviously, he's pretty accurate with his throw and consistent.
Yeah, but wait, we don't know anything about that. We don't know anything about that team, though. It's not like what else do we know about USC quarterbacks throughout history? Have there ever been any good ones? If he owns a record?
Well, I mean, Carson Palmer has gone there. You look at Matt Leinart. He was a stud in college. I mean, yeah, maybe he hasn't transitioned into the NFL, but Carson Palmer has. Matt Barr has had some pretty darn good quarterbacks that have played there. I mean, just because not all of them transition into the NFL, who knows what the situation there is. Matt Leinart was decent. He's still, I think, a backup quarterback. But Carson Palmer, Matt Barkley, Mark Sanchez, some of those quarterbacks are still playing in the league. You can hear about his arm strength isn't great, but overall he's an accurate quarterback, and who knows what they can do with the long ball, with Hugh Jackson. I think he has an opportunity to start. I know RG3 most likely is going to start, but I don't think Hugh Jackson is just going to count Cody Kessler out. I mean, they drafted him for a reason. You look at, what he did at USC. Those teams had a little bit of a down year, but he still played pretty well, and they didn't have necessarily all the crazy weapons some of the other teams had, like Reggie Bush. There was Reggie Bush, Mike Williams, and some different players on the USC teams that really balanced the attack for the quarterbacks out, where Cody Kessler, pretty much he's a pocket passer, and compared to Andy Dalton, which I think is interesting. When I watched one scout's opinion, he compared him to Andy Dalton. And, I wonder if Hugh Jackson read that scout's scouting report, because he even said he was a 3rd or 4th round pick and compared to Dalton. So I thought that was interesting. But
yeah, I shared
Cody
that.
Kessler,
I think, was that NFL Network?
I think it might have been from you, actually.
Yeah, I saw it, and I
remember.
Okay, if you go back to right after we picked him, I started doing some research. And that's the thing, too, guys. Here's the importance of linking up with Sports on Tap podcast, linking up with the New American Media.
Yep.
here's what happens. You flip open your phone, and if you, oh, by the way, you can do a search for our group. It's called The Unhappy Hour Sports Show. It's a private Facebook group. We have to confirm that you're an Indians, Cavs, Browns, or Buckeye fan to let you in the door. We're keeping it private just because we like the dynamics. It's a place where we're allowed to talk about everything. But, in between radio shows, in between writing articles, in between anything else, we're going to have great videos that really break down who this player is. And yeah, we're compared him to Andy Dalton. Yeah, we should take him in the, he's has a 3rd round grade to him. And you go, okay, Cody Kessler, somebody exactly watched that, or they both had the exact same opinion. And you start watching tape on the kid and you go, he throws a lot of touchdowns. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. No, he can hit the home run ball. That's fine. But, how is he in general? And you watch, you go, this kid actually looks. How much better is Jared Goff or Carson Wentz than this kid? I don't know how much better I would say Connor Cook. Connor Cook went after this kid. Talk about Connor Cook for a second, unless you had some more stuff to say on Cody Kessler.
No, Cody Kessler, I think he has the opportunity, and he was excited to be a Brown. And I think that's what you want out of all these guys that they draft is you want them to compete, and you really want them to go at it and be good football minds. How many times have the Browns drafted, say, a Johnny Manziel, who, is a crazy athlete, and we've seen that he could be pretty impressive, too, when he puts his mind to it, but he has so many off-the-field issues, and he wants everything handed to him, and it basically was handed to him. But, you want players, and I think a lot of this draft are players that just want to go out and have something to prove. But, yeah, when you look at Connor Cook, he was a guy that who knows, how he'll do. He's going to be on the Oakland Raiders, and he's obviously not going to start, but they probably figure if something happens, you have a decent backup there. I like Connor Cook's size. He's right out of Hinckley, Ohio here in the Northeast Ohio area, and I believe he played at Walsh. Was a pretty impressive kid. He started, I think, 3 or 4 years at Michigan State, had a pretty big arm. This year I thought he was a little inconsistent. Made some mistakes throwing interceptions, and was a little bit injured at some point. But, the word with him was he wasn't voted the team captain amongst players and that he didn't get along with everyone. And, there were some issues there. But overall, he's one of those pocket passers that has a pretty big arm. I thought he would have been a decent fit. If the Steelers or the Arizona Cardinals, he reminds me a little bit of like a Carson Palmer. He's not really a Ben Roethlisberger, but I thought if the Steelers are looking for a young quarterback that they need to develop, that probably would have been the time to do it because, look at Ben Roethlisberger. He's, got how many more good years in him. You need to get probably a young quarterback that can fill that void. Why not now? But I guess a lot of coaches really didn't like Connor attitude. I think it was more of his attitude. Some of the things he said in the newspapers and on radio, and it just sounded like he was had some sour grapes with some of the scouts that were critical of his attitude and maybe some of his gameplay. And I'm sure that's not going to go over well in the league because then once you get this guy on the team, if he doesn't start or you pull him, what kind of a loose cannon is he going to be? So I think he could be I know he'll probably be a pretty good backup. Can he start in the NFL? Yeah, but how good can he be? It's tough to really say. It depends what kind of attitude and what kind of is he going to be a guy that's going to go out there and work his tail off to get better and better? I think we'll have to wait and find out. He should. He got drafted in the 4th round. He was supposedly a 1st or 2nd round pick. So it's going to be interesting to see how he turns out as a quarterback in the NFL.
I had this bad sinking suspicion, Rob, that Cardale Jones was going to end up on the Steelers. That's who I saw as being that 6'6". You're replacing Ben Roethlisberger with a brand new version of Ben Roethlisberger, except even more of a rifle arm. And you go, oh man, I do not want to play against this guy for so many years. He ended up on the Bills, obviously. His magical run, his tear through the first ever college football playoff championship after Braxton Miller went down, after T.J. Barrett went down. Cardale Jones had one of the most amazing, and I think if he would have come out for the NFL draft riding that wave, if he would have done that last year instead of this year, he would have been a number 15 pick. He would have been taken in the middle of the first round by someone going, well, how do you pass up that? Look at what this kid just did from third stringer to national champion. let's take the, and then another year, and he was exposed, and there's a lot of holes in his game, but still, he's a young kid. He's got plenty of time to learn. You don't just write somebody off because they're not there yet. Well, maybe they're not done learning. Maybe they're not there. But Cardale, the knock on people, his thing was, I ain't come to play school. I came to play football, or whatever that quote actually was. And people said
that was a great quote. That was a really great quote that he said. I'll tell you, he'll never be forgotten. I'll tell you that. But he turned it around. I mean, he has, like you said, that was an amazing season that or a few games that he had. And, could he have gone to the NFL and made a ton of more money? Yeah, but I don't know, at that point, if he would have been completely ready for the spotlight. And now, the pressure might be off of him. I really hope he does make it. But like you said, I mean, that would have been an absolute perfect fit in Pittsburgh. He wouldn't have had any pressure because, Ben Roethlisberger is starting unless he can't walk.
Well, even then,
and
he hops around on one foot.
I mean, like you said, big arm, can run, same kind of player. So that would have been an absolute perfect fit. But again, the Steelers.
I can't believe the Steelers didn't do it. Rarely do I ever look at that team that's been just whooping on us for 2 straight decades, and they think they're superior. Don't you worry. Michigan used to do that to Ohio State. Your day's coming, Pittsburgh. Don't you worry. Just because it's been a good two decade long run, don't forget about us in the 80s. Don't forget about us in the 60s. Don't you dare forget who's your daddy in national in championships. If you go across the beginning of football, and then maybe it changes into the NFL, and then it's called a Super Bowl. Don't forget how many we've won with Otto Graham. We helped invent this game. But anyway, yeah, that was rarely do I look at them and wish they would have done something. But I'm so glad they didn't. But man, that was a perfect opportunity to just get Ben Roethlisberger 2.0. It's in their backyard. I don't know how they let Cardale slip out of their grasp. Take him in the third. Take him in the fourth. Reach one level and go, if this works and he can sit and learn from Big Ben for a couple years, in 2 or 3 years down the road, man, are we going to unleash a beast? Because he doesn't have to play right away. You don't expect him to be Andrew Luck or RG3 or, Jared Goff, a franchise-saving quarterback. They rarely work out anyway. So, man, I'm thank you that you didn't put Cardale on that team, but hopefully he can become that for the Bills now. Maybe he can sit back. He's actually going to compete for a starting job, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about those a little bit more. I want to tear through the players, Rob, that we haven't got a chance to talk about as we wind things down. Talk about the linemen out of Wisconsin. We already talked about Ricardo Lewis, and then Derek Kindred out of TCU.
Yeah, Joe Schobert out of Wisconsin. He was a round 4 selection, the first pick, number 99 overall, and he's a guy that, again, has been very productive at linebackers, and I think he has a definite chance to start. We'll see if he actually does start or not, but, I think he's another guy that has been consistently impressive with some of the stats he's had every year, continually being more and more productive. In 2 years as a starter, he had 6 fumbles, 3 he recovered. Overall, though, I mean, he's going to give you a lot of tackles. He plugs gaps really well. He has pretty decent man cover skills as a linebacker. Good balance. He's always been playing special teams too, and that's another thing in his interview. I know with the Browns is he wants to continue to be on special teams. So I think that's another high-value pick where he can play linebacker, but he also is going to give you some on the special teams. So overall, he's going to be rushing the passer from the edge, and he's good at dropping in coverage. So I think that's a pretty good pick. Now, when you go to round 4, pick 31, his name's Derek Kindred. He's a free safety out of TCU. And the Browns have a hole at safety, and I think they're looking to add another safety with Kindred. He's going to set the tone in the back. Pretty good playmaking ability, good instincts. He's busy on coverage teams. I think he has a chance to fit in too. But like you said, it's tough to say if they're going to start immediately. Some of these guys might not be starters right away. But they definitely are going to have a pretty good chance with the way the Browns have gone through, releasing a lot of the veterans, and they just have an overall young team. So I think there's going to be a ton of competition at every position. I mean, right after Kindred then was Seth DeValve. He's a tight end, a 6'4", 270 or 45-pound tight end from Princeton, and he mostly wasn't. They had him as a tight end at Princeton, but he more was a wide receiver. Kind of had that. He was tall, good hands. He's not the fastest guy out there, but he's a receiver with plus ball skills. And Hugh Jackson has probably the opportunity to move him around in different areas and really get creative with his skill set. He'll probably be a tight end, but I think you can find a lot of mismatches with him, especially with linebackers. The linebackers are probably going to be his height, but he's a pretty athletic player, so I think it's going to be a pretty impressive player. We'll see what happens with him if he can make the team, especially with all the tight ends that the Browns have with Barnage and some of the other guys, but I think he can be pretty solid. Then you go all the way down to the fifth round with Trey Caldwell out of Louisiana Monroe. He's a cornerback. Now this, I don't know a ton about him other than...
Before we get to Caldwell, did we skip... Okay.
Oh, Drango.
We're skipping all over the place, but yeah, let's talk about Drango as well, because it's another lineman. We lost two. It's just kind of what we're looking at. We got Sean Coleman, and then we took another one out of Baylor. Let's see if Cam Irving can actually move down and be a center. That's where he's supposed to be playing anyway. Maybe they've been
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually I skipped some of the wide receivers since we talked about them.
Yeah,
but
that's okay.
Drango was the fifth pick and pick 31, 168 overall. He's an offensive guard, 6'6", 315. He's out of Baylor, and I think this is actually, I think he's going to be a pretty good pick overall. When you have that kind of size, but he's best suited for inside blocking, but could swing also to right tackle if the Browns need him to, and I think that's what they like is his versatility. Because he's another guy that was pretty impressive at Baylor, moving around, a consistent offensive lineman that is strong, created holes for the running game, and was a consistent starter there. And when you get him in round 5, the Browns' offensive line, they do have some holes, losing Mack and Schwartz, but you still have Joe Thomas, you still have Joe Batonio, Johnny Greco's there, and Cam Irving. I think the one thing that he struggled with last year is, he is used to playing a lot of center in college. That's mostly what he played. He did play offensive line in college, but the Browns last year, they were moving him all over the place. I think he was on the left side for one game, and then they tried to put him over to the right side, and he was just all over where he couldn't consistent learning one position. Instead, he had to learn 2 or 3, so I think he struggled with that a little bit. Because in games, he was missing blocks. And I think it comes to knowing where you're supposed to be. I think he was trying to remember where he was supposed to be, and his guy would just blow past him. But I think this Drango can fit in, and that adds depth to the offensive line, especially when you draft Sean Coleman and then you have a Drango. Those are two really solid players that I think can make a difference on your offensive line.
Well, they're gonna have to, whether we think they will or whatever, they're gonna have to. And it's a lot like starting pitchers when it's like, oh, here's your final rotation, here's your top 5 for the Indians. You go, all right, well, who's number 6, 7, and 8? Because you know what happens throughout the course of a season. You just know, all right, he's gone on the 15-day, he's got an inflamed this or he has a strained that. Okay. He needs to sit down, so who's going to step in? And, let's face it, that offensive line, there's a lot of activity going on. So you need to have the right people that can step in and fill in, let alone when your starters leave, you go, all right, which among you guys needs to step in there? And it's going to be interesting. I get a feel... I just get a feel that this draft went really well. We've really because now next year we have a bunch of extra picks, and with an analytics guy. But by the way, was there any team in the NFL, Rob, that made as many moves as the Browns did? I didn't really chart.
I highly doubt it, to be honest. And that's the one thing you got to think about. They had, you said 14 draft picks this year, all probably I would say the high-value picks with guys that were really good in college, that put up pretty decent numbers, that, obviously have a story to tell, and that played for something. They have high motors, high character guys. It seemed like that was the trend this year. And then not only do you get 14 guys this year, but you added draft picks next year. I mean, imagine the Philadelphia Eagles starting Carson Wentz and having a down year. All of a sudden you have 2 picks possibly in the top 10, depending on what the Browns do this year. It's going to be a rebuilding year, so maybe they'll be like Tennessee, be close in a lot of games but still lose. And then all of a sudden you have a top pick. You could have 2 top picks next year, and then you also have a few more in the second round. So you're slowly building what could be a pretty good team. And I think that's how you have to do it. Because how many times do you see this Browns team, keep a lot of players from the previous regime and try to make it work, and it just never works out that way. I mean, this regime is definitely, they released a lot of veterans, and they're basically building from the ground up. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And I think that's the way it has to be done. Now, if it works or not, we'll find out. But you have to give them a chance, and you can't say, who cares? The Browns. I don't know how many times I saw, the Browns, I'm not going to believe in anything they pick, which I understand you got to wait and see. But let's not just be down and say, this is the same old Browns, because it is a different regime. Let's see how it works out. And I definitely liked a lot of the picks this year and a lot of the character guys that they brought in that want to play. They're excited about coming here, and they have something to play for.
Yeah, you look at teams like the Steelers, and they've had a culture for so long. It's the same type of player, the nasty, in-your-face. You got to be fighters. You have to give a damn if you're going to get down in the mud and win a fight. You have to care. And people talked about them in warfare before, like with the Hessians or, any mercenaries. Like, how much do you really care if you're just collecting a paycheck to be there? But if you're fighting for your life, like you're playing like your life is on the line, man, you got to really exert yourself. Think of the Cavs. When you play against Dellavedova, you have to really hustle to keep him out of your face. And that really wears you out over time. He's just one of those gnats. Every time you swing, he circles around and he's back in front of you again. And, for so many years, it seemed like the Steelers had those players, the ones that really gave a damn, the ones that were really excited to inflict pain and get those big plays and stop you and celebrate and just embarrass you. And it's been so long since the Browns have had that identity. Luckily, the Ohio State Buckeyes have given us that that we refuse to lose attitude, that nothing is going to stop us from our ultimate goal, that type of thing. I think you're onto something when you say that we're getting, and it's something we've talked about pretty much this whole show, just in different ways, that the Browns are drafting the right type of players, the mean players, the nasty players, the ones that play like their life is on the line, to change the attitude of, Dante Whitner getting blasted and playing horrible in games, and Josh Gordon getting high and not caring about the season, and Johnny Manziel blowing coke in Vegas and flying out to Vegas as Billy Manziel. Like, you gotta be kidding me. Get the hell out of my town and take that damn Ohio hat off your head. You didn't earn it, Johnny. You had the world handed to you. You know what? If some point you get your life together, I'm not even going to wish you the worst, even though you set my team back a couple of years. But maybe we have to bottom out so that we can hit the bottom and work our way up, much like an alcoholic or a drug abuser that really can't control the aspects of his life that are important. You got to hit rock bottom for that to happen. I just hope the kid doesn't end up dead like his family's worried about. But, it does seem like the Browns got the right type of person. Let's wrap it up with Scooby Wright III and Trey Caldwell. Come on. You talk about the right type of person. It sure seems like Scooby Wright was very excited to be a Cleveland Brown.
Yeah, when you jump in a pool with all your clothes on and, you're just it's impressive. It kind of gets you pumped up that he's that excited.
Yes.
But how about some of his stats, though? Defensive Player of the Year and ranked among the top 5 players in the country. He had 163 tackles, 29 tackles for loss, 14 sacks, and 6 forced fumbles. That to me is unbelievable. And, looking at overall how he's played, He has, they say, elite instincts, and appears to head in a direction of the play where he knows the play call. Like he has the instincts where he's pretty much going to go wherever the ball is and make a play on it. And those are the type of players you want on your team. He has good play speed. They said during the game, his speed is continually, just all over the place. It's fast, has good lateral agility, and he can shed blocks really well and beat his blocks and get to the play. His comparison, which I think is really interesting to me. If anybody remembers how Zach Thomas, the linebacker from the Miami Dolphins, played, that's the comparison that a lot of scouts compared him to. And to me, it's unbelievable that he dropped all the way to the 7th round. But like you said before, I think he had an injury-plagued 2015 season, and his name was on the back burner because of it. He might have, maybe not been all over the place in the publicity, in the eye of the media and all the scouts and everything. Because I know he even said at the combine he didn't run the greatest and didn't put up the best numbers out there. But overall, you look at his production, it says a completely different story. From Arizona, he was in the Pac-12, and I think he could be a really good player. He's 6 feet tall, 239 pounds, and I think this is a player that could, who knows, maybe start this year. But I think it's a great name. I think he has a really great story, especially how excited he was to come to the Browns. And, he had something I think you had on your Facebook page, the Unhappy Hour Facebook page, that had his story in which he wrote it before the draft, basically a resume to the NFL coaches and scouts out there on why he's going to be a good NFL player. And I thought it was really interesting. And, man, I would have probably took him in a heartbeat because you could tell this kid has a lot to play for. He's a hard-working guy. And when he jumped in the pool, he was just excited to be drafted. Now that's what it's about. He's a player that got drafted in the 7th round. That's the last round of the NFL draft, and he was overjoyed that he got drafted. That's something that's fun to watch, and I can't wait till he gets here. I hope it really works out for him and he's a starter on the Browns, because I think he would be a lot of fun. He would match up really well with the dog pound here in Cleveland. There's no doubt about that.
Man, It's hard to look at this draft and feel anything but excitement. You just look at what the Browns did. You look at the types of players that they're bringing in. I don't know how you can objectively take a look at it and not go, wow, am I excited for a new clear vision. It seems like D. Podesta said, look, there's a mathematical formula here to what each of these picks is worth. We all know it. Let's see if we can get more than that. And when we get more than that, let's just do that regardless. And we're still going to try to draft some great players and maybe set some parameters like stop losses on Wall Street. All right, if my stock drops below 32, it's a sell at 32. That's the parameters I'm keeping this under. And you say, okay, well, we'll draft out of number 2, but nowhere lower than 20. And what do? We got number 15. What do? We got the first choice of wide receiver. Guess what? It's on them now if this guy works out, if this Steve Smith angry, battling kind of style of Odell Beckham go up and get it little guy receiver, if he's worth it or not. Time is going to tell. Who's going to throw it to him? I don't know. Let's get this guy that the Rams gave away everybody for, or they collected from the Redskins so that they could take RG3. All right, he's had a down couple of years and some injuries. We know he's got skill out but let's see what we can get for him and draft a kid in the 3rd to push each other and get the best and by the way, we'll keep Terrell Pryor around because he's a quarterback too. And if we're going to be a dynamic offense, let's just keep that in our back pocket. All right, Hugh Jackson talks about building a dynamic offense, about doing amazing things. He has some ideas on what he can do now that he's building a team from scratch. Mark my words. And then if you use some of these other players, the Duke Johnson in the right kind of way, and you get the Crow, if with Gary Barnage, I mean, I'll tell you what, I'm very excited for football. I was so down on this team, and floundering under the same old regime wasn't working for me. So I like that they've went back, they've stockpiled some of these picks. I really think it's going to help get us on the right path moving forward. I don't know what path we've been on. It's just been kind of like a hamster wheel of staying terrible, and I'm really tired of being terrible. I think the Cleveland fans deserve so much better, and I think we're going to get better. Any final thoughts on the Browns? And as we wrap it up, if you wanted to just give us your several weeks in opinion on the Indians, and we'll let you get going.
Yeah, I think with this Browns team, you have to wait. It's a wait-see attitude, but like you said, I think they're doing it the right way. In the draft, I think they didn't necessarily go for, you look at the Trent Richardsons and the Justin Gilberts, they were going for name picks there. They did a lot of research on these guys, and they went for quality character guys that have proved in the college football ranks that they make plays, and they're very good, very impressive. They're consistently making tackles or whatever position they're at. And, I think it's pretty exciting. I think they've gotten a lot of talent in this draft. We'll see if they amount to good NFL players. But I agree with you. I think, these Cleveland fans are waiting for a championship, especially from the Cleveland Browns, just to be good, and maybe next year they won't be great or good. Maybe they'll win 3-4 games, but I feel like this team could be on the verge of getting better and better. And it starts with the draft. As far as the Indians, look at them. They've lost a lot of one-run games. They've lost, I think, 4 straight one-run games, a few extra inning games. Those are games, it's early right now, but they have to figure out ways to win. It's really early in the season, so it's tough to tell. But I think that they'll be a good team. They'll either be on the outside, on the really close to making the playoffs, but not make it, or they'll barely make the playoffs. But I think this team, they're an impressive team. They have some good bats in there. They're still a young, good team. The pitching has to be consistently good, along with the bullpen, which it's kind of been hit or miss right now. The bullpen has blown some games, but then the hitting hasn't produced. So they got to put it all together, and I think they'll be fine. But, whenever you're facing the Royals, in the Central Division, they're going to be tough. The Tigers, we swept them and it looked really impressive, but then, you lose 3 straight to the Twins, and that can't happen. So we'll see what happens. It's early on in the season. You got to be optimistic and see what happens here.
Absolutely. Rob, the Indians are sitting there right around 500. Hey, they're a young team.
Yep.
That's something I can look at and go, well, at least they didn't totally slip, and they have way too much to overcome. They're in a decent position, if not a good one. That's okay. I'll take that. And then if you look at the Browns, hey, the future's got to be bright there, because you don't get much worse than the second worst in the league. It's kind of,
That's right.
There's nowhere else to go but up. And I think there's a little bit of truth to that. And then, of course, the Cleveland Cavaliers, if you want to say that there's one team closest to bringing the next championship to Cleveland, the next one, since it's been 52 years since the last one, LeBron James, they're undefeated. The Golden State Warriors aren't undefeated in the playoffs. Let's just leave that hanging in the air for a second. For as tough as the Pistons series was, we haven't lost yet. But anyway, Rob Trautman, thank you so much for jumping in to talk about some of the Cleveland Browns, Indians, Cavs, and Buckeyes stuff, and we'll do this again soon. All right, buddy?
Hey, sounds good, Brian. Good talking with you.
All right, you take care, Rob. Make sure that you check his stuff out at Sports on Tap. Subscribe, youtube.com/The New American Media. On Twitter, we're at American_media_. Get us on Instagram and Facebook. And thank you. I appreciate you. We'll talk again soon. Peace.
And this is John B. Wells reminding you that not only is Brian Engelman a cool guy, and not only is the New American Media.com a very cool platform, but here's a cool idea for you, too. Are you alone? Not really. Do you like dogs? Do you like cats? You do. Of course you do. Everybody does. One or the other, maybe even both. There are a lot of dogs and cats that are at shelters right now, and if somebody doesn't take them home, they're going to wind up euthanized. That's a nice way of saying they're going to be killed, because there's simply not enough room. I guarantee it, the best dogs and the best cats, the best pets, come from shelters. There's something about dogs and cats. They know. They know where they are. You walk through one of them, and certainly at least one is going to look at you and go, I wish you'd take me home. I'm in hell. Please take me out of here. It'll be the best thing that you ever did. for your soul. You'll feel good about it. And not only that, but you have a friend for life. Doesn't matter if you got money, you don't have money. Well, it doesn't make any difference to a dog or cat. All they need is the sound of your voice and maybe even the stroke of your hand, and they're fine. Maybe a little food every once in a while. The sweetest sound that those pets ever hear is your voice. Think it over and adopt a cat or a dog from a local shelter today. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did.